Hey guys, Dzeeff here, and I'm just finishing up editing this video, and I wanted to add this little note at the beginning. Today's discussion video, which is about coronavirus and its impact on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, is not meant to downplay the severity of the coronavirus. The coronavirus is way more important than just a few Yu-Gi-Oh! Events, a few trading card game events getting canceled. Sure, it will mess up a couple things for the TCG, and yeah, some people have to refund some flights, but overall there are way more important things happening in the real world outside of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. I'm not a doctor, nor am I a scientist, so I can't talk about those real world issues, but I can talk about the virus and how it impacts the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, which is what this video aims to do. Please do not take this video as me saying that the coronavirus is not very important or that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Events getting canceled are the most important things that are happening because of it. That is not what I'm trying to say at all. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from, so without further ado, here's the regular video. Regardless of how you personally feel about coronavirus, the fact remains that many Yu-Gi-Oh! Events are currently being canceled. All of the European regionals through like mid-April have been shut down. As far as the American side of things go, we have 3 YCSs canceled, we had Charlotte canceled a few days ago, and now Hartford canceled. The 225th YCS even got canceled yesterday, the Friday before the event. And just in general, it's gonna change a lot of things. Right now, especially, is a big time for Yu-Gi-Oh! We're at the end of Master Rule 4, heading into Master Rule 5. So in today's video, I'm not really going to talk about what coronavirus is and how you can avoid it and stuff along those lines. I'm more so going to focus on the impact that it's going to have or is already having on the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. I'm going to be carefully monitoring the comment section of this video to make sure it doesn't explode into a flame war. Let's try to keep all the comments Yu-Gi-Oh! Related, not so much coronavirus related. That'll just make things a lot better for everyone involved. In today's video, we're mostly focusing on 3 different areas that coronavirus is going to affect in our trading card game. The first area is tournaments, as I've kind of already alluded to. The second area is the market, or how cards are being sold and stuff along those lines. And the third area is going to be the actual meta game and what happens when so many events are canceled. Please keep in mind this video is being recorded on March 13th, 2020. So if more information comes out, if more events get canceled, I have no way of knowing that because I can't see into the future. So just keep that in mind if you watch this video like a week or two or a month or two after it comes out. I don't really know what's going to happen later on. I can only talk about speculation for right now. So what's going on with events? Well, I've already mentioned a couple of these things. So in Europe, all of the regional qualifiers are canceled through about mid-April. Last night they actually announced for North and Latin America that all regionals through April 6th are now canceled. I personally was going to go to 2 different regionals over the next couple weeks, and both of those are now not happening. As I mentioned earlier, the 225th YCS, which was being held in Brazil, actually got canceled on the Friday before the event, which is pretty insane to think about. We also have the YCS in Charlotte canceled, which was going to be scheduled for a couple weeks from now, and then we have all the way out to YCS Hartford, which is going to be in mid-April. That is canceled as well. So how is this going to actually make an impact? Well, first off, I want to say that it's pretty cool that Konami is valuing the safety of its players more so than profiting, because they're going to lose a lot of money on canceling all these tournaments. I think that's pretty well known at this point. Lots of events bigger than YCSs all over the world are being canceled, so it makes sense for Konami to also cancel their events. They're going to lose a lot of money, but it's good that they're putting the player base's safety first. But more so, it's important to note that right now is a really big time in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. It's the last month of Master Rule 4 heading into Master Rule 5 on April 1st. We were also probably, and maybe we won't anymore, but we were probably going to have a ban list around April 1st once Master Rule 5 went into effect. Now though, I mean, we're not really going to have that. I really did not realize when I was playing at YCS Vegas that that would be my last Master Rule 4 event ever. I planned on going to the Columbus Regional, which was canceled, and then the Rosemont Regional, which was canceled, and then the YCS in Charlotte, which was canceled. A lot of locals around me, at least, I don't know about you guys, and we don't really have that many cases of coronavirus currently known in Michigan, but still, a lot of the locals around me have just completely canceled locals through April. So for me, at least, it's kind of weird because the next 2 months originally were going to be super jam-packed with tons of regionals and multiple YCSs and Master Rule 4 events and Master Rule 5 events, and now I'm pretty much not even playing at locals because half of them or more than half of them are canceled already. But what's really scary is what happens if even one WCQ is canceled. Like, what if the NA WCQ is canceled, or the European one is canceled, or the South American one is canceled? What happens then? I mean, do you just not send anyone from that area to Worlds? Worlds, or does Worlds get canceled? We really don't know how long this is going to be a problem. I've seen people sort of mention half jokingly that maybe we'll have YCSs or the WCQ like held on Dueling Book or Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, and I know that those comments are mostly jokes, but I just want to reiterate here that Konami does not like those programs. Those are not official programs. Pretty much all of those online Yu-Gi-Oh! Platforms have at least one or two glaring issues that make them unplayable at a competitive level. So even if Konami like didn't dislike those websites, it's pretty unlikely even still that they would ever be considered for a major competitive event. Next up, let's talk about the impact this is going to have on the market, because if there's no tournaments, especially if a lot of locals are closing, who's really going to want to buy cards? I asked in my live stream the other day how many people that were buying Duel Overload were still going to buy it now, and it seems like people were still generally interested in the sets, but I'm not super convinced that's going to be true for every single player. The only major product releases over the next 2 months are Duel Overload, which is obviously huge, and Secret Slayers, which probably isn't that big of a deal. But Duel Overload was going to be one of the biggest sets of the entire year, a fantastic reprint set, as well as a set that introduces a lot of cards into the metagame. This was a huge deal, and I'm not sure if people are going to be as willing to pick these cards up if they're not going to be able to play them in tournaments for at least a month and a half. For example, I just bought like a couple weeks ago a bunch of Invoked Shaddoll cards. Would I have spent $200 on cards if I would have known that all of my regionals and YCSs were going to be canceled? The answer is pretty much no. Why would I do that? Because if there's no tournaments that I can play in, why would I bother spending so much money on those cards? On the other hand, if all of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card prices, especially from Duel Overload, get ran into the ground because no one is buying them, maybe some savvy buyers out there will spend a lot of money and sort of stockpile things like Needle Fiber or the Simorg link or the Raid Raptor link or whatever, just so that when tournaments actually do start up again, now you have all those cards and people are really interested in playing the game and buying cards once again. We really don't know how long events are going to be canceled until. Yes, we have these like through April dates right now, but we really don't know how many more events could get pushed back or postponed indefinitely like the 2 YCSs have already had happen. And finally, let's spend a little bit of time talking about the metagame implications from not really having a lot of events to close out Master Rule 4 or start Master Rule 5. Generally speaking, there are two major ways that the metagame can change from week to week or month to month. One way is organically, and this is when players are adjusting their decks or adjusting their tech options to prepare themselves against what was successful over the past weekend or the past couple events. That's one of the ways that the metagame can change, and one of the other ways it can change is sort of artificially. That's when new packs or new cards are added into the metagame, maybe off of a ban list, that can help as well. Now with this new change of not having a lot of events, we're not going to get that organic metagame sort of development. You're not going to have that week to week change if there's no events that people are able to play their new cards at. It hasn't happened yet, but what if all the other regionals besides Europe also get canceled through mid-April? What's the point of a new ban list if there's no events for a few weeks? Sure, some locals are still going to be open and people want to test the new format, but it's going to be really interesting to see now if Konami actually will do a ban list really close to April 1st, like originally a lot of people had predicted they would do. Without having the last few Master Rule 4 events to really round out the format, without having a couple of the early Master Rule 5 events, it's going to be on Konami onto whether or not they actually want to do a new ban list in a format that maybe not a lot of people are actually going to get a chance to play in. A great example of how not having events could really hinder a strategy from seeing a lot of success is like the Apex Avian sort of Infinite Negate combo. This combo is the talk of the town, and a lot of people were going to prepare for it, but maybe people wouldn't have figured out the best way to beat it until several weeks into Master Rule 5. Now that we don't have those first couple weekends of Duel Overload, maybe by the time we actually have a lot of big events again, like whenever the first YCS after all this actually happens, maybe people will now know a really good counter to that opening Infinite Negation board that otherwise they wouldn't have figured out. Even though that's sort of organic metagame growth, it won't be quite the same thing because we won't actually have people playing decks too much. We'll just have people theorizing about what might be played and what you could maybe play to counter it. Admittedly, YCS Charlotte was going to be a really weird format. It was going to be the only YCS with Master Rule 4 and Duel Overload at the same time, but it would have still been pretty cool to see, what people actually came up with. And while I obviously care about the metagame and the market, that's why I made this video, or at least part of the reason why, I mostly want to go back to that first point, talking about tournaments, because the WCQs are huge and the World Championship is huge. The biggest events of the year all happen sort of at the start and middle of the summer. So if those get canceled, it's going to be really, really sad. It's going to be a huge sort of disappointment for a lot of players. Obviously, the safety of the player base has to come first. Getting sick is not worth going to a tournament, but hopefully, we really just don't know. But I really hope that those events find a way to still happen. Hopefully this thing is all passed over by then, but we really just don't know. I'm going to remain optimistic, as hopefully you guys do as well, but realistically, Konami is going to do whatever they feel is the safest option for the player base, and with so many cancellations for events that are around the same time as WCQs already happening outside of the Yu-Gi-Oh sort of world, I would not be surprised to see, I'd be disappointed, but not surprised to see those events canceled, which would be a real shame. We'll learn more about that as the months go on and we see how the world addresses the coronavirus, but for right now I'm just trying to think for the future about what might actually happen to the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game, or at least the remaining of this season. It'd be pretty wild to think about if the first event after all of this happens is like in August or something along those lines. We'll just have to wait and see though. I'm going to be really curious to see what Konami actually decides to do. I'll see you later though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.